Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Serious, former paranormal skeptics, what changed your mind? I was a freshman in high school and my mom and I had just moved into a house. On days that I would be at home all day during the weekends, summer or just when I was out sick, every single day at about 1 o'clock, always the exact same time there would be loud footsteps as if someone was running across the roof over my room. It was only over my room that they could be heard and it was distinctly a human running across the roof in 2 feet. The footsteps would start from the corner of my room facing the rest of the house and end at the edge of the roof in front of the front yard. I told my mom about this after a few months and she told me that the people who own the house we were renting told her that the previous owner was a postal worker who jumped off the roof and killed himself. Another time in that same house I heard clear as day the sound of a man clearing his throat coming from another room. This was after midnight and it was only my mom and I. Still a bit of a skeptic, though given some of my experiences I perhaps shouldn't be. I have lived in 2 odd houses and almost a third. The first was my grandmother's house. It was one of the first houses in the area, but apparently it was normal until a neighbor started f***ing around. I was living there with some mates, cheap rent. All of us had the normal kind of stuff. Small lights and shadows moving down the hall and phantom knocks. The constant feeling someone was watching you. The feeling was bad enough that no one wanted to be alone in that place. Though to be honest I always thought it liked me. This was all well and good until we watched the third Exorcist movie. The movie, well, changed. The possessed priest turned and talked to us. For over 20 years I believed I had some kind of psychotic break. However, about a year ago my best mate was telling my daughter about that accursed place. Lights, shadows, etc. Then he talked about the time that he talked to us. Thing was, we never talked about it. Both of us were afraid we were losing our shit. The second was the first place I lived in with my future wife and mother of my children. Normal house with an abandoned car out the front. No heebie-jeebies during the inspection, not setting off my weird shit-o-meter, though the garage was cold. It got progressively weirder. My girlfriend saw a shadow in the mirror whilst she was showering. My friend who lived with us started hearing crying late at night. Oh, and our dog refused to enter the garage. She would follow my girlfriend everywhere except there. The weirdness peaked when the CD player played by itself. The worst part was the song Like Suicide by Soundgarden. Over and over again. Inspected the CD and no scratches. We eventually spoke to the neighbors and found out what happened. A young bloke had gassed himself in a car. What car? Well, the one parked in front of the house, of course. We got the cops to remove the car and the problems dissipated. I actually have plenty now that I think about it. My best friend died a couple years ago and a week after his funeral I was driving on a pretty quiet highway in a snowstorm. An Erykah Badu song came on that I used to sing for him all the time and I broke down crying while I was driving. I sang that song for him the day we met and he asked me to never stop. I had never experienced grief like this before. I literally wanted to die sometimes, anything to make it stop hurting. I thought that I would never be able to feel companionship again, that I would be alone for the rest of my life without him. So I'm driving down the highway, in the snow, feeling these feelings and crying. All of a sudden it felt like somebody from my passenger seat slapped me in my face really hard and then the car in front of me slammed on its brakes. I would have hit him at 70 miles per hour if I wasn't jolted out of the zone I was in. I pulled over and just sort of froze. One thing to note about my friend is that he had the absolute best hugs. Almost everyone mentioned it during the memorial and still talk about it today. Truly. The best hugs. He was a big guy, so it literally felt like a giant teddy bear wrapping its arms around you with all of the love he has to give. I will never enjoy a hug again. I will never be hugged like he did. While I was sitting there crying, it's difficult to describe. I felt this warmth all over, inside and out. It felt like I was being hugged by him. And in my head, I heard his voice telling me that I was being melodramatic and that I can't give up, reminding me that I'm capable of handling this. Slapping me to save my life and calling me stupid for wallowing is absolutely something he would do. I heard his voice in my head, but it was louder than I thought. It's hard to explain, but it was like I could really hear him, just inside my mind. Instantly I felt like I was going to be okay. I felt happy even, like this overwhelming sense of almost closure. I knew that I was going to be okay and I knew that he was not in pain anymore. and that meant that he was okay, too. We both struggled with our mental health and found solace in each other. I like to imagine that he mustered up as much strength as he could to make sure that I was going to be okay. And he did. Of course, grief is still hard, but after that experience it's been something that I'm okay living with, most of the time. He would have wanted me to know that he's alright now. He would have known that it was going to eat me alive, and he made sure to let me know so that I could be okay. Okay, so this is my story. When I was 14, me, my friends and their parents went for a walk in the scrubland of our village. At one point, we found an almost whole wild boar carcass of a wild boar, only the bones remained. I'd cry, we start to assume with. And I took the boar's skull in my hand, and I started shouting, "I'm going to eat you. I'm going to eat you." It was pretty funny at the time. Then we left the bones and we all went home quite late. Suddenly, I went to bed straight away, without even taking a shower. I was really tired, but kind of unusually tired, in my opinion. And I fell asleep pretty quickly. This is where it gets really weird. I woke up in the middle of the night. And I was really sweaty. But really. I began to have a big cold sweat, like when you are about to vomit or faint. I felt really bad and wanted to tell my mom that something was wrong. But I just couldn't move. I could only have my head and my fingers. I felt pressure on my elbows, and on my chest. It looked like someone had put a stone on me. I was really struggling to breathe. I started to cry because I thought a thief was on top of me. It was creepy. And that's when I got really scared. I started to hear "I'm going to eat you," but it was strange. It's like a thought coming from within you, but it's not you saying it. As if something comes in you and says it's something there in you, and after, nothing more. I must have vanished, or calmed down and fell asleep, but it's a complete blackout. After that, I immediately thought it was the spirit of the boar who was not happy that I used it as a game. It may sound ridiculous, but when something like this happens to you is much less. The next day, I contacted my friends to find out how it was their night, because they had also touched the skeleton. And they all told me that either they slept very badly or that they had nightmares. Voila, this is my experience. P.S. I don't write English very well. I hope it's understandable. Smile. I was home alone one day when I was like 12. I was playing some Fallout in my room, where all of a sudden, I just heard close whispered in my ear, and the door just shut slowly. I've been spooked about it ever since, and, now that I think about it, was probably just a dream. There was also another time I had a dream and just saw myself sleeping. Don't know if that counts. I just think it's spoopy. I sorta believed in the paranormal but never really had any experiences to justify that any of that was real until this happened. The day my brother died, my best friend came over and we just sat on his bed in our basement and cried. Our basement was half finished, and the other half was storage, which was separated by these two heavy doors that were held in place with this like friction spring ball thing in a wall. They were basically hard as hell to open. As we were sitting there crying, holding on to each other, I grabbed a picture of my brother and just said, "I can't believe you're gone." The moment that sentence left my mouth, those two doors slammed open and I saw a shadow figure standing in the darkness. My friend started crying harder when that happened and he just grabbed onto me for dear life. He and I rarely talk about it, but we both saw and experienced it. I am a true believer now. A more recent experience I had just happened 2 days ago. I live up the street from my grandma and grandpa, and my grandpa and I have an extremely strong connection. We get made fun of constantly for being so close. I was taking a midday nap and all I remember was waking up screaming with my mom trying to calm me down. I don't remember what I was dreaming about, but my mom said she had never heard me scream like that in my life and was crying. 10 seconds after I gained consciousness, my phone rang. It was my grandma telling me that my grandpa fell down, hit his head, and she couldn't get him up. He's fine now and just has a bit of a goose egg on the back of his head. I can only believe that something yanked me out of sleep so that I would be able to react to that moment. I've always been open to believing most things. I think it's a little arrogant to think that there aren't things about this world that we can't explain/see/understand. However, I try to remain skeptical. Always on a maybe there is, maybe there isn't point of view. As a kid I had several experiences that made me believe, but I was also the youngest in my family and the prime target for pranks. So it's hard for me to tell what I imagined, and what was real. Most of it probably imagined, until this one time. We moved to the suburbs when I was in the 2nd grade, and that house always gave my brother and I the heebie-jeebies. Your normal paranormal activity stuff that can neither be explained or that people just don't believe. All of the cupboards being open, mom calling you into the room when she isn't home, footsteps. Those kinds of things. It wasn't until I watched my dog get smacked out of the air mid-jump that I was convinced. He was a Great Dane, so a very large dog. We were in the backyard playing and he's doing his kangaroo thing. Danes do this thing when they are excited where they just jump a lot. Much like zoomies, but bouncy. He was bouncing at something, like he was playing with someone, and then mid-jump, his body flew to the side and he yelped and ran inside with his tail between his legs. The other 2 dogs followed, tails tucked, and my friend and I were just left standing there like WTF just happened. He had a heart attack in that same spot 1 year later and died. My family was deeply evangelical. We didn't believe in angels or demons coming to us, or that dead relatives could be contacted, anything like that. They legit called it Catholic propaganda. When I was 16, my parents were going through a pretty bad divorce and my mom moved out to an apartment where both of us were living. I had some friends over one night and we were bored and decided to tell ghost stories. At some point, all of my lights went off and the door to the balcony opened. It was a sliding door, so it couldn't be the wind. I also lived on the 4th floor, so it couldn't be an intruder. I brushed it off as strong winds and went to sleep. My friends were scared shitless. Fast forward a few weeks, I came home from my then BF's house late at night and went to take a shower. When I was ready to sleep, I opened my mom's bedroom. It was the only one with air conditioning, so we shared it. And there was this 6-foot-tall woman in a nightgown standing right by the door, hunched over. She had long black hair like my mom and I couldn't really see her face, but I thought it was just my mom getting up for a late night snack. I called mom, "Sorry for coming late, didn't mean to wake you up." No response, and she walked past me, without looking. I turned my back to see if I was hallucinating and sure enough, she was gone. That night, I had a horrible sleep paralysis episode and to this day, I see that woman haunting me in my peripheral vision when I'm walking home at night. I don't know who she is or what she wants. She has never hurt me or anyone else, but she made me believe ghosts are real. I've held the mentality for ghosts and aliens of I'll believe it when I see it. I've heard some really good evidence for years, but there could be a way of fake evidence and claims for all of them. But months ago to now, I am a believer. Not only that, but I have a witness who experienced the same thing. I've had a cat for 17 years in my life since I was a baby. I'm 22 now. She was my best friend and guardian cat. After she passed, me and my mother took some time to ourselves for a few months, until we got a new kitten. Last year, though, things got odd. I had gotten used to having our cat around the house. Sometimes she'd even jump up on the bed with me for a few hours. I had gotten used to heightening my senses, and could tell where she was and what she wanted when she was on my bed. Having the left side of the bed facing a window made it easier to know if she wanted up there. It's a bit of a leap up there, but she tries to climb up because the curtain gets in the way. As usual, I felt what seemed like 4 paws on the left side, near my calves. Strange, I thought to myself. She usually jumps up to my bed, which makes a very distinct sound. I thought nothing of it, and looked over to see her probably wanting up to the window, but nothing was there. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I watched a video of someone playing Don't Open Your Eyes recently. It didn't fill my mind with creepy imagery, but it made me think of the mechanics of that game. If you don't see it, it stays there. The next night, or maybe the night after, the same thing happened. 4 distinct pressure points near my calves just showed up. No warning or anything. So I waited. I knew there was something. 4 distinct pressure points that indented my bed and blankets. I could feel it. No doubt, there was something there. Then, they disappeared. I jumped up, and looked over to where it was. Nothing. And I slowly went to sleep. A while later, I said nothing to anyone. But my mom spoke up and described the exact same thing happening to her, saying it was my old guardian cat checking up on her. Of course, I spoke up and told my tale, but I had no explanation for it. Only a month ago now, I realized that's it. I had a ghost encounter. I have my story. And, I have a witness. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.